for today's emergency webinar. Today's emergency webinar is actually geared to and focused on the AviQ auto-injector recall. The reason that we're doing this webinar is, well, multifold. First and most importantly, there's obviously been a key recall for a life safety product, and we want to ensure that each and every one of you are clear and understand the expectations that go along with that recall. Know what your limitations are as a school and what your compliance and legal ramifications of not knowing what that compliance looks like, but also to attempt to help you spin this to win this. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means shortly. But long story short, there is a light at the end of this tunnel, and this actually, for some of you, may be a beneficial recall, although quite a bit of a headache and a significant challenge for many. The good news is at this time that 0 fatalities have been reported as a result of a failed product, as well as the fact that very few injuries, if any at all, have been or have resulted from the use of the AviQ auto-injector device. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you that have been on the school safety webinar series with us throughout this school year, you know that we typically are delivering content for about an hour, and today's emergency webinar is geared to be much briefer than that. Something that frankly you can share with your staff and your faculty. You may even decide you need to or want to share with your parent community. And so if you're sharing with everybody else, I would encourage you to begin sharing at this point, and we're about 2.5 minutes into the series at this, or into the webinar at this point. So again, my name is Chris. I'm the founder and CEO of Jaffe Emergency Services, and we're a school safety company that covers schools from New York to LA and San Francisco to North Carolina, and we truly do love the work that we do. We love the opportunity to help protect and to keep students safe. We love the ability to help protect and keep staff and faculty safe, and frankly, we love that we can do that in a way that empowers each and every one of our learners to do more and to excel themselves in any emergency situation. Today, obviously, we're talking about the AviQ epinephrine auto-injector recall. And again, this is an emergency webinar, and this is specifically designed to discuss some of the challenges that go along with the recall, as well as to help you identify some solutions that you may be able to put in place. And in doing so, you may actually be able to help more students even more, believe it or not, and so that's really what today is all about. So with that, the update and the facts. The AviQ epinephrine auto-injector tool was recalled on October 26th. The reason for the recall is that the device is delivering incorrect dosages of epinephrine. Epinephrine is a drug that many of us think of, frankly, Pulp Fiction when we see it, and when we think of that scene where one of the characters just jammed this adrenaline shot into somebody's heart. And frankly, that's exactly what epinephrine is and does. Although we don't get to put it into anybody's heart, that wouldn't actually do anybody any good at all. On the flip side, epinephrine auto-injectors are used to deliver epinephrine into typically the back of the thigh or the back of the leg. And they're used to combat anaphylaxis, which is a severe allergic reaction. And oftentimes, students have severe allergic reactions to things like chocolate or shellfish or dairy, sometimes bees. And whether it's something that's quote-unquote common like that or something a little bit less common like grass or hay or pollen, doesn't necessarily matter. But what does matter is that we deliver the appropriate amount of epinephrine in the appropriate place, and that we call 911 so that the folks that can actually help continue this life-saving tool and mechanism are able to get there and help support us. Now, epinephrine is generally delivered in very, very small doses. Less than 1 milligram is actually delivered. And so what we're looking to do is we're looking to try and deliver all of that epinephrine, deliver it in a concentrated fashion and right in the back of the thigh, and then have that epinephrine open up the lungs and open up the ability for that child or adult to breathe, and to close down or squeeze down on some of those blood vessels that have opened up as part of the anaphylactic reaction. So if you're one of those folks that isn't necessarily interested in how that happens, don't worry, that's all I'll share with you about the biology behind it. But if you're one of the folks that wants to know a little bit more, feel free to contact us at the end of this webinar, and you're certainly welcome to ask more questions and learn a little bit more. Now, what as a school are you supposed to do as a result of this recall? Well, in short, you need to make sure that we find and we access new devices. So whether they're the traditional EpiPens or there's something from a doctor that's been prescribed specifically for that student and it looks or feels a little bit different, doesn't make much of a difference. But there are a couple of really important things for you to know. The first is that all Auvi-Q epinephrine autoinjectors have been recalled. So it's not as though there's one that's safe or there's one that has not been, or the older model or the newer model or anything like that is safe or anything like that at all. Unfortunately, at this point, every Auvi-Q device has been recalled, and if those devices haven't made it back to the manufacturer already, they certainly shouldn't be used on a student or an adult in the time of anaphylaxis. Improper dosages, whether too much or too little, can be very, very dangerous with epinephrine because the drug itself has a lot of impact on the heart, the blood vessels, and the lungs, and obviously those are the things that keep us alive. So what do you need to do? You need to make sure that you get a replacement for the Auvi-Q devices that you have on campus. That replacement, again, can come in any form, whether it's the traditional EpiPen device, it's something a little bit older, or it's something a little bit newer, frankly. If it's one of the test models that's out there right now, doesn't matter so long as it's not an Auvi-Q. When you provide the information or as you're seeking the new devices, I would strongly recommend that you, at minimum, take the Auvi-Q statement from their website and share that with your parent community, share that with your families if you're dealing with high schoolers or people who are old enough to participate in their own medical care, and let them know exactly why you're asking them to bring in a different EpiPen. EpiPens in general can be very, very expensive. They can range anywhere from $100 to $500 or $600 a piece. Sometimes that's with insurance, and so people are likely not going to want to go through the transition process, and frankly there are families that may say, well, you know what, that's okay, just use it anyway if it's close enough, because there are some articles that are circulating right now suggesting that the dosage is pretty close to what it was supposed to be. As a healthcare provider, of course, we know that pretty close is not appropriate. We need to give the exact dosage recommended or allowed, and so pretty close just doesn't work. So if you have families that are resistant to replacing the Auvi-Q device, I would strongly encourage you to A, inform them, let them know that the devices have been recalled, B, share with them that it is every device, that there's not a safe device on the market that comes from Auvi-Q today, and C, talk with them a little bit about some strategies that they may use to actually acquire these other devices. My suspicion is that in just a number of days that Auvi-Q will come out with a replaced or a refreshed device that is safe and that is back in action, and that it will continue or go back to being the next leading provider of auto-injectors for epinephrine for students and for adults alike. Whether or not that happens, it's very likely that some credit will be offered financially to students, to families, and everybody else who's purchased one, so that they're not on the hook for that sunk cost that otherwise they may be. But finally, whether they're resistant or they say, all right, great, I'll swap out the device, avoid panic and avoid having them run out right this moment to pick their child up and keep their child at home for the next couple of days until they can get a new EpiPen. Let them know that this is something that is urgent. In fact, it's emergent. That's the reason that we're doing this webinar right now. However, it's something that they can do relatively quickly. So the best advice for them is to call the doctor, let them know that they're aware of the recall, ask the doctor to call in a new prescription for a new EpiPen to any local pharmacy, and go in and pick that EpiPen up. The next piece, and this is something that we offer to all of our schools in any opportunity we have, is we want you to be the first ones to call, because in some communities, the EpiPens that the pharmacies have currently are going to go really, really quickly. So I would challenge each and every one of you to try and get an email out today, as challenging as that may be, worst case perhaps in the next couple of days. But get a message out and encourage your families to be the first ones in line at the pharmacy so that they can ensure that they get the first or even the last EpiPens that are available, as opposed to waiting until the end of next week, waiting until the end of the following week, waiting to see if Auvi-Q does something different or can put out a better product quickly, because that may be too dangerous and that may be too late. Now, anytime we talk about, frankly, anything, but especially emergencies, we do everything that we can to spin it to win it, right? We want to ensure that the surroundings and the environment that we're in are advantageous for us, and if they're not, immediately. Sometimes they are after a little bit more thought and consideration. And with this particular recall, there is actually a way to spin it to win it. For those of you that have been along with the school safety webinar series that we've conducted all year, you know that our recommendation, and in fact our firm rule and policy at many of our schools, is that there are 3 EpiPens available for every student on every campus. What's great about this recall, and again, I recognize the financial challenges, I recognize the time challenges, and I recognize, frankly, the safety issue that goes along with this device. But what's great about this recall and the way that we're spinning it to win it is that we have the opportunity now to go out and to purchase a couple of more EpiPens for each student. And ultimately, AviQ will release a better device that is able to deliver epinephrine at the correct dosage. And when they do so, they'll likely replace the current devices either at no cost or at a low cost. They'll find a way to make that work. So your families need to go out and buy a new EpiPen today. That's something that does need to happen. However, if they buy 2 EpiPens and they give you 2 right now for the school and they say put this one in the child's backpack or locker and put this one in the health office, or put this one in the front office and put this one in the health office, depending on the age group of the student, when the new AviQ pens come out, there may be an opportunity to have extra EpiPens on hand for the families and therefore extra EpiPens on hand for each school. So if you're one of those schools where many of your students just can't financially or otherwise manage the impact of trying to get and have their hands on 3 EpiPens, then perhaps you can use this as a strategy to actually build that up and to get to a point where you do have 3 EpiPens on campus and you do have them available and accessible in an emergency. So spin it to win it, try to get back to 3 EpiPens per student. And for those of you that are unsuccessful in doing so, check in and try to see if you can figure out why. Is it a financial challenge? Is it just the time? Is it a communication issue? Because more than likely, the physician for each student is going to be willing to deliver 3 EpiPens. That's not all that big of a deal, and that's not all that much to ask for. More than likely, the insurance provider for the student, or again, for the adult, is going to be willing to provide at least 2 to 5 EpiPens for that student or that adult. They tend to provide somewhere between 2 and 4 for elementary school students and somewhere between 2 and 8 actually for upper school students and adults. And so there's an opportunity to get a lot of these at a low cost. And so find out if those aren't the issues, then what is the challenge? Why don't we have all 3 EpiPens on campus the way that they ought to be? And again, if you can use this opportunity to try to build back to 3, I certainly would welcome that opportunity, and in fact, I would even challenge everybody listening today to do just that. Now, this was an emergency broadcast, and so it was brief, it was to the point, and your immediate next steps are obviously to notify your community of the recall so that they are aware if they haven't already been made aware, to manage next steps in terms of figuring out how you're going to replace the current AviQ pens you have on campus, and then to figure out how to rebuild or get back to 3 EpiPens at some point in the next couple of weeks or months, depending on how long it takes for AviQ to sort of make this right and get their 2 feet back on the ground. If you have any immediate questions or you need help or support crafting a message or attempting to figure out what your policy on campus should be, please feel free to email us at schools@joffeeemergencyservices.com or give us a call at 800-913-6270. For all of you that are out there, we encourage you and we ask that you do everything that you can to prevent the panic that may go along with this and to give an opportunity for AviQ to make this right. It certainly is a great device. If they can make it work, it will be an incredible life-saving device. Obviously, if they can't, then that's a separate issue. Again, thank you so much for being with us. We hope that you have a wonderful next couple of days and that you're able to manage this recall as effectively and efficiently as possible for your community. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the webinar series.